We're so privileged today to talk to a real master and legend of the guitar, the great Arlen Roth. Roth has toured the world and recorded with countless acts such as Simon and Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, John Prine, Phoebe Snow, Levon Helm, Cooder, John Sebastian, the Bee Gees, and many more. He has released 15 albums, including ones such as All Tricked Out, Slide Guitar Summit, and Toolin' Around Woodstock with Levon Helm. His 2017 album Telemasters features Roth in duets with other Telecaster masters such as Brad Paisley, Vince Gill, Steve Cropper, Joe Bonamassa, to name a few. It is produced by two-time Grammy Award winner Tom Hambridge. Within the sphere of music education, Roth is popularly known as the creator of the famed Hot Licks video instructional series, which has sold in excess of 2.5 million copies. His current online lessons and blogs for Gibson.com have over 1 million followers, and he has helped create over 1,000 online lessons and blogs for Gibson guitars. Arlen, it's great to have you on the show for the first time.
Yeah, Nick, great to be here. Thank you so much. And I guess it sounds like I've been really busy.
Well, you said that you started guitar at the age of 9, encouraged by your dad. And your dad, the famous New Yorker cartoonist, Al Ross. Yeah,
he's Al Ross, R-O-S-S, because he was one of 4 Roth brothers. So they all became cartoonists. So they had to take different pen names. They all couldn't be named Roth. So he took on R-O-S-S, Ross. And he was a guy, he really encouraged me big time. You know, he was a creative, wonderfully creative man who understood that, you know, what you were going to make of yourself was going to happen out there in real life. You know, it wasn't going to be taught to you in a school or anything like that. So he saw that I had that knack, that ability to just hear something and play it. And he said, "You're going to be a guitar player."
Now, what were you figuring out? Like, what were the records or things that you were kind of picking out on the guitar?
Well, he would listen to, when he was going through one of his Picasso phases, my dad was listening to flamenco records in the living room when he was going through his heavy Picasso period, you know. So he was thinking like a Spaniard. So he'd play these flamenco records, and that's all guitar. So we had a guitar in the house that had only 2 strings on it from my brother in college. My brother's 10 years older than me. So I would start taking those 2 strings and started to play harmonies and things on them, and I would play slide on it with my mother's lipstick holder, you know, and this is about when I was around 8 or 9. So he said, you know, I could just see that you're going to be a guitar player. So he took me down to Greenwich Village. We found, I was already playing violin, you know, in school and doing very well with the violin. But he said, you know, we're going to take you we're going to find a teacher, and found this wonderful woman in Greenwich Village who gave me lessons for a few months, but she kicked me out when I bought an electric guitar.
That's right. Why did she kick you out?
Well, she had 2. I mean, first of all, she had adopted 2 children at one time, so she suddenly became very involved in being a mother. But she also said, you know, "Oh, you're playing electric guitar now. You know, I have another student, another teacher for you, you know, who'd be better." So she sends me to this guy in the East Village. And I remember I went up to his apartment while my dad sat downstairs in the car having a slice of pizza. And I went up. I had to wake up this guy. I had to wake him up. And then he goes to the refrigerator and he has breakfast, which was a salami. I mean, he just took out an entire salami and just started eating it. And then he was on the telephone for like 20 minutes. And I'm sitting there. He says, all right, let me hear what you can do. So I pick up the guitar, I plug it in, I start playing, and he goes, "You're better than me." He goes, "You're already better than me." He says, "Get out of here." He goes, he says, "You don't need a teacher." And he also kicked me out, but he kicked me out in a good way. First of all, I was so glad to get away from the salami, you know. And he said, "You're better than me." I came down and I saw my dad. My dad's like, "What's going on?" He said, "I don't need lessons." I'm just learning on my own. So from that point on, I just kept on learning on my own, and I was really, very successful at just learning guitar out there in the real world.
Well, let me ask you this, Arlen. Do you have perfect pitch?
I have perfect relative pitch, which I think is probably more, I don't know if I have perfect pitch or not. I probably do, but I have perfect relative pitch. Like, for example, if I was playing the guitar, or if I was hearing some music playing, and if somebody dropped a dish on the floor, I would be able to tell you exactly the notes that dish made. Or I could play the riff that dish made, because I hear everything in life not only as music, but also as licks, as riffs. They're all understandable because it's really all a mathematical relationship. As musicians, we're mathematicians. So when you talk in terms of the number system, you say, well, I'm going to play a 1-6-2-5, or I'm going to play a 1-2-5-7 progression, whatever. That's all we need to know. We don't need to know the actual names of the notes, because it just matters what key we're in. If we're in the key of G, okay, so let's do a 1-6-2-5 in G. It doesn't matter what key you're in, because all the keys have the same relationships within them. But I could hear, anything. I once demonstrated this at a dinner party for people, and it was really funny because everybody was eating soup. There was about 12 people eating soup from these same bowls, and the bowls had, like, if you could picture them looking almost a little bit like Saturn, they had like a ring around the top, but then the bowl was underneath that ring. So all the bowls were playing the exact same note, even though everybody's soup was at a different level. Some of the bowls of soup were full, some of them were empty. But I'm sitting there, I'm going out of my mind, because all I'm hearing is bum 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 from 12 people eating soup. So the guy says to me, well, that must be because we have such fine china. I'm like, well, I said, the fact that they're all exact probably means that they're all made by the same machine,
right,
at the same time. And then I went into this whole demonstration for them about, the typical thing of filling different glasses of water and saying, okay, this is a minor third, this is a fifth, this is a seventh. And their minds were blown. Their minds were blown by it.
Now, you're self-taught, but you have a knowledge of intervals and relative pitch. Now, did you conduct on yourself a systematic system of training your ear? How did you develop your ear?
Just one step at a time, because, it's like when you go out there in the world, and I had been playing a lot of 1-4-5 blues, for years before I stepped out. When I moved up to Woodstock, when I was 17, when I moved to Woodstock, all of a sudden it was the world of jumping up on stage with a bunch of people and having to play new chord changes, because this was the era of the singer-songwriter. So maybe the song would have a 1-4-5 in it, but it might also have a 2 minor, It might be G to A minor to F to C to D, whatever it might be. So right away I had to understand, hearing the relationship of those notes to each other, what I call, when I teach, I call them archetypes or archetypes, however people pronounce that word. Like if you, for example, go from a C chord to an E7, that move, that relationship right there, once that happens, that gets imprinted on you. You retain that relationship of what it sounds like to go from a C to an E, as opposed to from a C to an A or a C to a D. Or, for example, when I teach students, the first thing I show them, I say, look, here's a major chord, but can you recognize if it's a seventh when I make it a seventh? Can you recognize what about that chord makes it a seventh? Because I think we're pretty good at recognizing seventh chords, like a C7. And I said, well, that's because it has a note in it that is a whole step below the root, below the tonic. So once you know that relationship, then you could start to understand other relationships. Like, what's it like when you add a second or a ninth to a C chord? What's that? Well, that's just a whole step above the root.
And did you, Arlen, did you read books on this? Did you have peers who taught you about this?
No, absolutely not. I learned right inside my head, in my ears, and by playing out. Now, granted, I must have had, even at that young age, I must have had a very strong understanding of the relationship of sounds, to each other. Even before I understood music, Like my mom said that when she used to take me outside, because we lived near the subway, the subway L, where the trains would screech above head. And she said all I did was cry and scream while the trains were there because I couldn't handle that shrillness, that pitch. And I said, why is it that everybody else is walking around and they don't even pay any attention to it, And I'm screaming because the trains are killing my ears. So I always had very sensitive hearing, and I think I'm also very sensitive to tonalities and how they relate to each other. So then when music came along to me, that immediately touched me. There was an understanding. It's like I tell people, they say, you can't teach me anything. I'm tone deaf. I said, what do you mean you're tone deaf? You love music, right? Oh, yeah, I love music. Well, I said, well, if you love music, you're not tone deaf. You love the relationship of those sounds.
And actually, being tone deaf is a very, very rare medical condition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, yeah, tones and relationship of tones, this is something that exists throughout the universe.
Well, Arlen, you're a world-class improviser and you play by ear. I'm curious,
yes.
do you also sight read standard music notation because you had a bit of classical music training?
No, I can't read. What happened with my classical teacher was she said to me, my God, she said, you play so quickly by just listening and watching. She says, I'm going to dispense with the music. So she would move the music away, which of course, in the end, I wish I did learn to read music quickly. Like I can write music, because when I had to write my first book, Slide Guitar, I was 19. I didn't want to admit to the publisher that I didn't understand how to write or read music. So I just looked at the paper and I said, well, I remember where the G was from playing tonette in like 4th grade or 3rd grade or whatever. And I said, well, if that's a G, then the one above it must be an A, and then that must be a B. And so I started just extrapolating how to write music because I understood, I at least understood where the G was.
This actually I want to ask you, Arlen, you're such a famous educator. What is your opinion, because you play by ear, what is your opinion by guitar students nowadays learning everything by tablature?
That's okay. You have to understand that tablature, I actually introduced certain types of tablature that were never used before because I did many books that dealt with string bending and slide guitar and things like that, and I had to create new symbols and a more refined kind of tablature so that I could convey what I was trying to teach. But if you look back on the earliest written music for like the lute, way back,
tablature.
Whatever, that's tablature. So I mean, maybe it was there even before. See, tablature makes great sense because if on the guitar, if you take, for example, the note of an open E string, well, that note in that very same octave can exist in about 5 different places. So the tablature shows you precisely where it should be.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here because you're such a great musician. I want to see how you react to this. Since you have such a great ear, do you feel that if a student is just doing tablature, they may not develop the kind of ear that you developed when you were young?
That's all due to their own physiology. For example, if if I had been shown only tablature, like, okay, you must learn this, you must learn it this way, I still would have developed into being me. I still would have taken that music and taken those sounds and started the need to be an artist, the need to take that music and be creative with it and do something that was personal to me. I can remember coming home on the school bus when I was in junior high school, and the guitar was just opening up to me to the point where that's all I could think about. That's all that was on my mind was music. And I remember I used to sit on the bus, and I would have a whole piece written in my head before I got home. And I'd say, I can't wait to get the guitar in my hands and see if this will work, you know? And I like to call it that big fingerboard in the sky. Like I had this imagination of the fretboard up in the sky, because that was like my real home base as far as music is concerned, is the guitar neck, you know. And I'd get home and I'd be like, wow, that's great. I was able to conjure up this piece just coming home from school. And so it you know, people would always be like, you know, he's kind of a loner. What's he doing? You know, Arlen doesn't play with us. He's not outside playing stickball. He's not. So one day I said, look, I'm going to put my amplifier right in the window, just like an air conditioner from the fifth floor, and blast out what I've been doing. And then everybody on the block was cheering and clapping, just with the music just pouring out of me.
Well, let me ask you this, Arlen. How many hours did you practice, and how many do you practice right now?
Well, I never considered it practice, number one. I always just called it playing. But back then, I probably played about 4 hours a day. And now I sort of have to force myself to play, but usually it's late at night. I'll play for maybe an hour or two. But what I like about teaching privately is I always tell my students, you know, this hour that we just played together, I probably wouldn't have played. So it keeps me playing. The teaching private students keeps honing my chops even more. And that's another thing. I've learned so much about me and music from teaching. Because as you teach and as you have to keep on digging deep and coming up with new ideas and new concepts, you realize what it is you do. You realize what it is. Like I didn't know that was a pentatonic scale that I was playing. You know, I just thought of it as a connection of a bunch of licks that sounded good, you know. Then I said, oh, that's a pentatonic scale. Got it. You know, and then you start to learn from teaching, really. That's one of the great things I love.
You definitely gained a lot of street cred because in 1982, Paul Simon actually asked you to teach him, give him guitar lessons, and then you said they not only that, they actually turned into these 2 to 3 hour songwriting sessions where he kind of used a lot of your material for his album Hearts and Bones.
Oh yeah, well the thing about that was such an honor was, you know, you're sitting in this room and you're playing with Paul Simon and he's asking you questions, and then before you know it, he was so inspired by some of the things I would show him that the next day he would probably show me how he like made it into a song or how he worked it into a song. But he would always say, you know, Arlen, I'm stuck. I got this song and I'm stuck. And I would say, wow, Paul Simon says he's stuck, man. So then I'd listen to the song and I would immediately go somewhere where his eyes, I remember his eyes would get twice as big. He'd be like, why didn't I think of that kind of thing, you know? And, you know, I didn't get credit on the albums or anything, but he would give personal credit. Like if we were listening to it with a bunch of people, he'd say, there's that part Arlen wrote, there's Arlen's part, you know?
Yep.
So it felt great to be able to be like in on that kind of private you know, functionality of seeing Paul Simon at work and becoming part of that situation.
What's really interesting about that is it really is telling the world just that anecdote tells you that you're on that level, writing at that level, which is really impressive. Now, you were influenced by, you've mentioned many people, Mike Bloomfield, B.B. King,
Sure.
Chuck Berry, Buddy Guy. You mentioned a lot of names. Did you, now let's talk about songwriting. How were you influenced harmony-wise and song construction? Where did you learn that? And did you write songs when you were a kid?
Yes, I always wrote songs when I was a kid. Whatever I knew, I would try to put it into a creative process. So if I only knew C, A minor, F, G, right away that became a song, you know. But I would pull from many influences, you know, a lot of Chuck Berry, a lot of Beatles, you know, sort of like the timbres, certain timbres that the Beatles would use. Of course, the Beatles were so instinctive in their writing, you could tell. I mean, the songs just kind of breathe right out there to you. They exist so perfectly in space, and you know that they didn't agonize over them. You know that they had to bang these tunes out. You know, I like all different kinds of music. It's like whatever I hear, it becomes part of me, and then sometimes it comes out in a song. I'm a little not disciplined enough to be a full-time songwriter. You know, I wish I could do that, but I get so. First of all, I've become very wrapped up in a song instrumentally. If I'm happy with a song as an instrumental, and people might think it needs words, I mean, I may have it for 4 years like that, but I might write words to it on the way to the session, you know, because I really don't care too much about the words. I think that a note says much more than a word ever could. So when I get, like, for example, there's a song on All Tricked Out called Heart of This Town, which is a very, very, it's like my favorite song, I think, that I've ever written. And it's purely instrumental. But I kept trying to write words to it, and it always kept coming out with this, in the heart of this town, in this middle section. So I said, you know what, I'm always taking singing songs and making them instrumentals, like When a Man Loves a Woman, or I Can't Stop Loving You, or Ain't No Sunshine. I said, why don't you just treat this song as if it once had words, and now you're going to play it instrumentally. And that's what I did, and the song is so picturesque, it's so visual, that we're going to be making a video, you know, a music video to go with this instrumental. And I think it's got smash hit written all over it, you know.
Fantastic. I mean, you've really played with all the name players of the guitar and other instruments. When you were starting out, did you just jam with a lot of people? And did you just play a lot? You mentioned the School of Hard Knocks, the School of Life. How much can you give a perspective on how much you played with other people and absorbed their playing? And what was that like? Would you ask them questions, or would you just watch them and try and emulate?
That's a good question. I mean, because when I grew up in the Bronx, there wasn't really much. There weren't many musicians around. Most of the people on the street would just kind of sing a cappella, doo-wop harmonies, you know, like Dion and the Belmonts, that kind of stuff. And so I had to play to that band in my head. You know, I had to create a band in my head and play to those changes. And I also would play to records too. But once I went to college in Philadelphia College of Art, and I was only 16. Well, first of all, I was at Music and Art High School in Manhattan. So music and art was great because everybody would bring their guitars to school, and we would jam, and we would play after school. You know, we would go to people's houses and say, okay, we're going to jam at my house today, you know, whatever. And you don't even realize how much I was learning at such a rapid rate, because what you're doing there is you're at a very young age and you're learning a language. So it's like, let's go over to my house and let's speak French all day, you know. It's like, let's go over to the house and let's play guitar. So we listened to records. At that time, we were listening to a lot of acoustic stuff, you know, blues like Son House and Robert Johnson. And, of course, I was so into Paul Butterfield Blues Band with Mike Bloomfield. And it was such a thrill when I moved up to Woodstock and I got to play with Paul Butterfield. You know, it was like unbelievable. But I think that once I went to college, and then there were people who we really would have these jam sessions that were almost like a competitive race, you know, like I would sit with this one guy who I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he and I would play all night long in the lobby of the school or in the lobby of the dormitory, and there'd be like 100 people there hanging off the rafters watching us.
What kind of tunes would you guys play? Would it be the blues or everything?
Yeah, blues. Yeah, blues, just blues jams, you know, blues, and some country tunes, you know, Hank Williams type stuff and straight ahead blues, but it was all about improvisation. It was like, I'm going to cut you down, you're going to cut me down. And then there's one guy, Catfish Wells, who ended up joining my band there in Philadelphia and who showed me a lot about a lot of cool music that was going on. He, after one jam, I remember he said, Lightning Roth, and he called me Lightning. And that's why Ralph Macchio got called Lightning in Crossroads, because he heard that story. He said, that's it, I want to be called Lightning, you know.
Okay, that's a great segue.
There's a lot of stuff in that movie that was actually from my life.
No, that's you bring up, this is a brilliant segue, and rather inexplicably, you don't receive any film credit for that movie, and you have an enormous influence on that movie. You had a lot to do with the project, not just as a music consultant, but you even sat in the director's chair for some of the musical scenes. That's quite a major influence on that film.
What a thrill. Well, you see, what Walter Hill understood, Walter Hill was the director, who was really a great guy. He understood that all of this music stuff was above his head, that he didn't get a grasp on what we were talking about or what was going on. But I was being paid a lot of money to be the one to make sure that the music went right and that the music was authentic and that, of course, Ralph Macchio was playing correctly, because I started teaching him even 2 months before the movie. You know, I saw him 4 days a week for 2 months, even before we started filming. So he went in there really prepared to be able to fake it, you know. What you really heard was me, or what you really heard was Ry Cooder, or what you really heard was Bill Cannongeiser, who played a lot of all the classical in the movie. And, of course, there was Steve Vai at the end, who was a last-minute addition.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand, that duel wasn't actually the plan. The plan wasn't to have a heavy metal guy come in, and because that really changed the whole vibe of the movie.
God, it destroyed us. Me and Ry Cooder were like, oh my God, you know, and like Steve Vai and I became great buddies as a result of it, and it was great working with Steve, you know, and he loved working with me. He said, I can't believe how you come up with all this stuff, so, you know, improvise, because I would come up with all these scenes right on the spot. You know, as we were filming, I'd say, okay, here's what Ralph should do. You know, I would just create it right there. And because I could play knowing the parameters of what Ralph could make look believable. I wouldn't do something that Ralph couldn't pull off, you know, in terms of faking it, in terms of, you know, miming it. Of course, Ralph wanted to really be playing for the movie, and I wish he could have, but he wasn't able to get that far, you know, deep into it. You know, I would leave his house, and then his karate instructor would show up. You know, it'd be like we go from guitar to karate every day.
He watched you jam with Frank Faust and Son Thomas, and was so impressed that he told the director to put a scene similar like that in the movie.
Well, you know what's really cool? I found a rare tape that I had of all this stuff, and I put it up on SoundCloud. There's a whole bunch of SoundCloud stuff of me making the film Crossroads, like me and Ry Cooder with the original ending, the first time we tried it, you know, before Steve Vai was involved. These were things that we record. Some of them were things we recorded in L.A. before we even went to Mississippi. You know, but Ralph, yeah, that scene, that moment of me and Son Thomas and Frank Frost, that's on that SoundCloud thing, and you can hear Ralph talking. Ralph's going, "When are you going on? When are you going up?" You know, and you know, so we're just sitting at a table talking. But the scene that inspired Ralph was when I went to this bar. The second night we were there, I went to this club where they hadn't seen a white guy like play there ever.
Oh, okay. So I might have messed that up. So it was a different night then, but he watched you jam.
It was a different night, but this was with Son Thomas.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I started playing behind him, you know, and he goes, "Listen, man, we ain't making it, man. We're not making it, man." And then this other guy comes up, he goes, "Mr. Guitar Player, we know you're feeling pretty good. We could tell you're feeling pretty good, Mr. Guitar Player." And they're all talking about me, you know. And I was thinking, like, man, this whole place is ready to, like, attack me or something. They hate me,
yeah.
You know. And Ralph was there. And Ralph is like, what Arlen just went through, I want that in the movie.
Well, yeah,
you
that's
know?
a cool scene.
And so they wrote it into the film. That's the scene where the guys say, you know, "Man, we can't believe you got balls so big that you can walk in here with a guitar and think you can play," you know, like that. That was all because of that.
Did the crowd dig that when you started playing with them?
Oh, yeah, people were loving it. But there was an antagonism that was really strong, you know, because they were like, "Man, this is our music. This is our place." And, you know, at that time, they were probably still used to feeling very segregated down there.
Now, Ry Cooder made a comment. He said that, you know, the movie, he just was pretty cryptic. He said the movie went down the tube as a result of, I guess, you know, probably the change of tone at the end. Could you just comment on that?
I agree with that. I still think that the movie had so much good stuff that you could sink your teeth into that any average guitar fan would probably find it interesting. But the problem was they turned it into, you know, they took one look at, they wanted it to be more of like the Karate Kid. You know, they were already thinking inside the box instead of out of the box. And because I remember when me and Ry did that first ending, and it was so great. I mean, I had Jim Keltner on drums and Jimmy Dickinson on piano. I'm like, oh my God, I'm playing with all these legends, you know, and me and Cooder just having a blast, you know, trading off. It was a slide duel. It was meant to be a slide duel, just like the script called for. So then all of a sudden Walter Hill goes, "It's not enough of a boxing match. I want it to be more of a boxing match." I'm thinking, oh, shoot, boxing match. Yeah, now he's talking about the Karate Kid,
yeah.
You know. And then Steve Vai walked in 7 months later, and they said, "Oh, that's what we want. We want this tough-looking guy, this heavy metal wise guy, you know." And I said, "You're dating the movie as 1985. You're dating it." But Arlen, this is 19. I said, but it's forever going to be in that 80s slot, because I thought heavy metal was already passé. You know, to me it was passé from the moment they started playing it. You know, it's like it was already what's the word? It wasn't music. It was like a pose. It was like an effect. It wasn't the real deal. You know, because all those guys afterwards, they always say, "Oh, but we're really blues men. We learned blues. We're blues players." You know, that's how they all tried to survive after heavy metal went down the tubes. You know, and then they had to show that they thought they were blues men because they actually listened to Led Zeppelin. It's like, no, that's not where the blues came from. You know, but whatever. It was a great experience. Unfortunately, my credits got messed up.
Well, I hope everybody knows now, and I hope we can spread it, that you are so integral to that movie, and I hope a lot of people,
absolutely,
people know about that. So
I think people know. I think people know.
I'd like to switch gears now to, you know, you're popularly known for the Hot Licks instructional videos, and, you know, you're so well known for that. Over 2.5 million copies sold, 220 videos by like 180 artists. I mean, it's really an amazing catalog. And I think it's really a testament to you that you could get these top musicians, because I think they really respected you as an artist, and you could look at them at their level, which not many people can do, and get them to shoot these incredible videos. And I mean, would it be cool if I asked you about a couple of them?
Sure. I mean, it was, in the beginning, of course, it was a very hard thing to convince other players to do that, because I'm the guy that started it. I'm the guy that was the first one to do videos. So at first I had to chase them down, and then some of them they ended up having to chase me down because it became so popular. But the bottom line with that was that, some people got it right off the bat. Like when I asked John Entwistle of The Who to do it, he right away understood that this was a cool thing for him to do. But you have to realize he did audio tapes for me before I went to video. Hot Licks was 6 years of only being audio, or 5 years of being strictly audio before I went over to video, which was at the time of doing Crossroads. So anyway, go ahead. You can ask your question.
Well, I guess I'd like to ask you about Joe Pass, who's recorded a couple of videos with you. What was it like?
Great.
What was the recording session like? And talking to him, off the camera. What was your Joe Pass experience like? And yeah, I'd love to know about that.
Well, Joe Pass was phenomenal, and I had such respect for his playing, and he's such a cool guy. Just a real salt of the earth kind of guy. So I went out. A lot of these videos were done when I was out in California, working a lot on Crossroads. I also would set up these Hot Lick sessions of filming people there too. And Joe Pass, it was really funny because I remember I came to his house. It was like in the valley somewhere, and it was like a really hot day, and he was like lying by the pool and eating watermelon, And I started talking to him and smoking a cigar, And I said, well, this is what we do. I said, you first, you come in and you make sure that they tune up to you. He goes, oh, man, do I have to, show them how to tune? Oh, man. I said, no, you're not going to show them how to tune. I said, you just got to give them a note so they can be in tune with you, So then when we shot the video, he's going, I don't know, I think the guitar's in tune. It was in tune from the factory, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that joke, yeah.
So it was like a joke that he remembered, he still remembered, he was still irked by the fact that he had to show them to tune,
Yeah.
But he said, oh, man, he's like, I got a train to catch, man. He looks up at the clock. But he was just, he just had such a natural, relaxed way about him.
And did you play with him off camera or just get a chance to work?
No, no, I didn't. I was too scared to play with him.
Right.
I mean, I didn't want to do that. Like there's some videos where I wanted to give the guys the feeling of the respect that this day is their day. This is their day. They are the artist. How would I want to be treated? I'm going to treat them that way, and I'm going to honor them because we're honoring them by doing this video in this way. So some of the videos I would have to play with the artist and have to draw it out of them. Like Mick Taylor was so shy, and John Entwistle was shy, and James Burton and Lonnie Mack, people like that who were not the most verbal people, so I would like to play with them and then, get them to answer some questions. And eventually I started asking questions, and I would take away my voice. Like the James Burton video, it looks like he's going from topic to topic, but actually it's me asking him those questions, and then I would edit out my questions.
Well, let me ask you about another person. I mean, the George Benson Art of Jazz Guitar video. I mean, that's an amazing video. And I asked Tommy Emmanuel about George Benson, and he really respects George Benson. He brought up that video, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, he's so amazing, you can only just watch and kind of marvel at it. So,
right.
what was it like, the shooting of that video, hanging out with him? And because there's actually a little bit of an added bit at the end of the video where you're just kind of chatting with him. So what was that like?
Oh, yeah, there is. Yeah, I don't even remember that. George was fabulous, and that happened because I was at the Long Island Guitar Show, and I was showing my wares. You know, I was selling my videos at the booth, and George was like grabbing armfuls of them. He's going, "Oh man, Joe's my man, Emily's my girl," blah blah. You know, talking about Emily Remler. He's just armfuls of videos. And I said, this guy is fantastic. I said, he's so humble, you know. And I said to him, I said, hey, listen, man, you know, we should do a video, you know. And he said, yeah, I'd like to do a little fireside chat. Oh, yeah,
that's right. It's in his house.
He says that in the video, yeah. And he goes, so next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm in his living room, and I'm there recording this video. And it was really cool because once we had everything set up and all the cameras were ready to roll, he says to me, all right, come on, let's go have lunch. And he takes me in a vintage, you know, I'm really into vintage cars. He took me in his vintage Rolls Royce or Bentley, and we went to this Italian restaurant. And we just sat there very quietly, very discreetly, just having a nice lunch together in his hometown there, you know. And I just loved that show of respect that he had where it was kind of like, okay, these people are all ready for us, but let's first go have lunch, and then we'll be ready to do our thing, you know. And he said he needed me there to feel comfortable. He said, I'll do it, but you got to be there to hold my hand. Well, the minute the tape started rolling, it's like, welcome to the George Benson show. You know, it's like, he's all personality. He's like, well, here we are having my fireside chat and blah, blah, blah. And I like to fiddle and fiddle on the guitar and boom, boom, boom. And it was just so much fun. You know, he was a joy to work with and so sweet and such a gentleman.
You brought up Emily Remler. It's very sad that she passed away so young. But could you talk? She was definitely a talent. Could you talk about her video and how the shooting of that and what was that like?
She did 2 videos for me, which was great. And she, you know, at that time in her life, I mean, I didn't know her before that. So in fact, she's the one that gave me Joe Pass's number.
Oh,
so
wow.
like from doing her video, it led to other people, but. She was like, she seemed a little bit apprehensive and scared about it a little bit because I would walk in and she'd go to me, don't worry, baby, it's all right, baby, it's okay, baby. And I'm like, what? There's nothing wrong. What do you mean it's okay, baby? What? What's the matter? You know, but I'm thinking, oh, she's feeling internally something. So she's telling me it's okay, but she's really telling herself it's okay. You know, but it was great. She was wonderful, and she was so straight ahead and honest doing it, and she took very little time. I mean, it was like she did 2 of them in one day, you know, and so she was just very straight ahead, honest, and she was very much in touch with the teaching. It was a little bit more scholarly because she's kind of a Berklee School of Music kind of person, you know. But I was very impressed with her, and she did a great job, and I thought she was very sweet.
Let me ask you, what's your favorite video? I mean, that's a kind of a tough question to ask, but either ones that you've shot or you've recorded of other people. Do you have any special videos that are, you know, just really special to you?
Well, they I guess they all occupy their own sort of like places in life. I mean, when I watch those videos, it's like watching my whole life pass before my eyes, you know. But because when I think about what went into doing each one, but I would say from an entertainment factor and from just sheer Americana and just how incredible, I would say Junior Wells doing the harmonica video. because it is such a stretch, and it's such a blues philosophy, like, you know, like we're going to turn on this camera, we don't know what we're going to get, you know. And Junior was like, he's walking down the street with me. He goes, "Oh man, there used to be one over there, and there was one over there. What happened? There was one over there." I said, "What are you talking about? Music stores?" He goes, "No, liquor stores, man." I'm like, "You remember where all the liquor stores were?" You know. And so it's like, as long as he had that shot of that bottle of what gin at like 11 o'clock in the morning, he was ready to go, you know. And I'm like, oh my God. That was pretty incredible, because it's just, if you ever watch it, it's a total work of art, the whole thing.
Now, that's the thing. Now, you, in 2005, you sold the catalog to Music Sales Corps, and, you know, you have that massive catalog. Is the whole catalog available, or there's still many left unreleased in the vault?
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are still unreleased, and unfortunately, a lot of them are mine, you know, because you say there were 180 artists and 220 videos. Well, that's because I did like 40 videos, my own. So a lot of my stuff has been reissued, but a lot of it has not, which is a shame, because I had like a acoustic guitar A to Z course that was 6 tapes, and that was, you know, Guitar Player reviewed it, and they said it was probably the greatest instructional videos ever recorded, and they still have never put them out.
It's such a shame. Music Sales Corps, I mean, get on it. Just, you got to release those videos.
It's a whole heartbreak, you know. I mean, I had to sell the company because there was this one person that was stealing all the money, and I was devastated because I had lost my wife and child. They were killed, and I had no, you know, my wife is the one who functioned as the one who ran the company, and I had to trust people, and in trusting people, they stole everything. They sent the company completely down the drain. So I spent 7 years just trying to sell it, you know. And by the time I sold it, they bought it just for what was owed, because this woman who stole all the money, she would never pay the artists any royalties. She would never answer phone calls. She would never fulfill orders. And she was a real monster, you know. So she destroyed everything, and I was just left with nothing. That's it.
You know, you faced really incredible adversity, both in your personal life and then professionally with your company. You're really a strong individual, and it's really a testament that you've really released.
I don't know how strong.
But you've released some amazing music, you know, in the recent years, and
sure.
You're going really strong.
Yeah, the only thing I have left, you know, I have my daughter Lexi, who's fantastic. And I have my music. Yeah,
by the way, congratulations on your amazing album, Telemasters. What a treat that album is, and you've got so many amazing players. Could you share a few words about the project and what you want the listener to enjoy about that album?
Oh, it's, well, I love when I start hearing people's reactions to it, because it's very diverse, and I wanted it to be, you know, the Telemasters. In other words, it was a follow-up to my Slide Guitar Summit. You know, the Slide Guitar Summit was all slide guitar players, like 9 of us. And the Telecaster, we've got 14 Telemasters. And, you know, it's dedicated to all the great Telemasters of the past, like my good friend Danny Gatton and, you know, Roy Buchanan and people like Jimmy Bryant, you know, Albert Collins. It's dedicated to the memory of all those greats. And I wanted it to be diverse. I wanted it to be, you know, like not just a bunch of tele-whacking, you know, Nashville hot-picking. Of course, unfortunately, I think a lot of that stuff has become almost a little bit of a parody of itself, you know. Like these guys pick up the Telecaster and they think they have to keep playing all those same licks all the time. I wanted diversity. I remember Vince Gill. I wanted to do something slow and soulful with Vince Gill. I said, because Vince, you know, there's going to be people on this record playing 8 million notes. And he said, Arlen, if you're looking for soulful, I'm your man. Like, which I thought was such a sweet thing to say.
You're absolutely so respected that you have all these amazing top-of-the-line musicians
I
showing
know,
up
it's
on the
incredible.
album.
They all line up to play. I just can't believe it, you know?
You're a draw, man. And
It
so
blows my mind.
Now, there's a great quote by you where you say, "If you're recording me, never miss my first take." Now,
Absolutely.
Now, what's special
Absolutely.
about the first take?
Well, this goes back to what you and I were talking about in the beginning, which is that the first take for me is the most honest take. It's my first impression of that song, of that music, and it's the most heartfelt because it's coming out of me just like a sentence. Like the first time you come up with a really smart thing to say and you say it, you know, boom, it's right there. And after that, you know, it becomes diminishing returns, you know, and I've had too many of those sessions in life where people, it's take number 35, you know, and they're telling you, could you play that a little bit more like Clapton, or could you play that a little bit more like so-and-so? I said, I thought you wanted me for me. Why are you asking me to play it like that? Why are you wringing me out to the point of there being no creativity left in me, in my fingers? You're killing me here. But those are producers and people that don't understand. And so I remember there were so many times I would do a recording and people say, "Oh man, that thing you just did, could you do that again?" I'm like, "Do that again?" I said, "I don't even know what I did. It was a dream." I said, if you don't capture that, it's lost forever. It's lost forever. It's that moment that we heard another galaxy, a space probe saying, "Send more Chuck Berry." You missed it. You missed that moment. But I'm just kidding around. But I mean, it's you know,
Yeah.
That's the essence. That is the true essence. That's why when I started out as a live performer, and that's where people would go crazy and cheer my solos. I'm saying, wow, they're cheering a solo that I just came up with totally off the cuff, you know, totally out of my soul. And that's what they love.
Now, Arlen, you're very into music education, and you're such a master musician. Why do you think, and this is a question I keep asking all my guests, all these great musicians, why is it, you know, classical music is so popular in music education? It's really a common starting point for people. But classical musicians don't improvise. You know, they're very good.
No, they don't.
They're great readers, but they don't improvise. And it's kind of strange because if you look at like Beethoven or Mozart, those guys, they could really improvise. So it's so different.
Well, writing music is improvisation. If you come up with an idea, that's improvisation.
So could you comment on that, the lack of improvisation in the field of classical music?
Sure. Well, classical music, you know, has a very strict way of being taught, and it's something that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And you know, when I came up with hot licks and that kind of education, that was as an antithesis to that, because the guitar is a very young instrument. So I said, let's not deal with any strict preset way of teaching. Let's teach the way I teach students, which is I look at a student and I read their hands, I read their ear, I look at them and I see what they need. And then I start giving them what I think is going to push them in an inspired direction, you know, which in the end, we're still going to teach ourselves. You know, we still have to teach ourselves. I can't be there all the time holding your hand. But the trouble with classical musicians is they think that they have to always, it's like school forever. It's like you never leave school, you know. I met a very famous viola player up in Massachusetts one time. They were doing like one of these little house concerts for a friend of mine. And the guy showed me his viola. He said, you know, this is the most valuable viola probably in the world, and it belonged to the greatest viola player of all time. And I own it now, and it's worth about $2 million. I said, wow, $2 million. He said, but you know what, Arlen? He said, I would trade this viola right now if I could just improvise like you. And I said, you mean you can't improvise? I said, you know all these notes, all this stuff, and you can't take it to the next level of just playing from the heart.
Yeah, I don't understand it myself.
That's why, like, you know, when you look at classical music, it's like Bill Cannongizer was this wonderful classical guitar player who worked on the film Crossroads with me. And he would always show, I won this competition, I won that competition, all these competitions. I said, well, isn't that weird that you can have competitions in music? But
Right.
that's because they're all playing the same stuff. You know?
Yeah, I always said it was like if you're playing a Beethoven competition, Beethoven did all the hard work to begin with. Now we're just he came. It's the hard stuff is coming up with the notes.
Right. You see, then it becomes interpretation.
Yeah, and actually they say in their world, improvisation is now interpretation.
Is interpretation. That's right. Well, it's true. It's true. But it's like, for example, I have to impress myself. If I go up on stage and I play When a Man Loves a Woman for the 10,000th time, every time I play that song, it's got to be different for me. I don't even care. I know the audience is there to hear it, but I have to impress myself. I need to be taking it to another level just for me. If I'm going through the motions, I'm the first person to know it. I'm the first person to be disappointed. You know, people say, "Oh man, you were so great tonight," and I'm like, "Really? I was not very impressed with my playing." You know, because I need to build. I need to keep on growing as a musician every time I play, because that's how I started. That's the pattern I've always been on. And a lot of guitar players, a lot of musicians out there would understand what I'm talking about now, because that's something that, you know, I used to say to myself as a kid, you're going to pick up the guitar now and you're going to play something new. Every day you're going to play something new, because there's nobody around to teach you. You've got to teach yourself, you know. So that's what I do to this day. When I'm on stage, it's got to be fresh for me every time.
Wow, Arlen, this hour is totally flown. So I want to end off with a hot seat time with the fun questions. So really quick, the really quick fun questions. I'm going to ask you really fast ones. Don't need to worry too much about the answer. Just whatever comes to mind, okay? So here we go.
Okay.
So who are your top 3 favorite blues guitar players?
B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Lonnie Johnson.
Okay, top 3 country guitar players.
Merle Travis, Clarence White, Doc Watson.
All right, now top 3 R&B guitar players.
Cornell Dupree, Steve Cropper, and Reggie Young.
Okay, how about top 3 jazz guitar players?
Okay, Joe Pass, Tal Farlow, Wes Montgomery.
Did you shoot a video with Tal Farlow?
Sure.
Yeah, how was that
like? We did audio
like?
tapes. Oh, the greatest. What a great man. The greatest. Yeah, we did a video. We did audio tapes in the beginning, you know, before we went into video. He's like,
he's amazing.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
This is Carolina Slim. He called himself Carolina Slim. He was like one of the, I can't even describe what a great man he was. I mean, just incredible. And what hands, and what a player. He used to make fun of me. He'd be like, look at Arlen, he's playing E. He plays in the key of E. Ha ha. You know, he used to make fun of me.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Now, okay, here's a funny question. You have an amazing guitar collection, but let's say there's a fire and you only have time to take 3 guitars.
God, don't even say that.
Let's say you have time to take 3 guitars. Which would they be?
Well, they'd be the 3 guitars that I cut my teeth on. My 53 Telecaster, my 54 Stratocaster, and my 52 Les Paul.
Now, okay, if you could jam with anyone that you haven't jammed with in your career, and it could be in history, it could be like Mozart or someone, who would you jam with?
Oh, man. I'd want to jam with the Beatles. I would. I'd want to sit in and play with Paul and George and John and Ringo, because I think that I could add something, you know, that I would like be so there with them that they may want to make me the 5th member, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Well, everyone, the great Arlen Roth, what an amazing player, what a fantastic musician. So honored to be able to talk to him. And man, I hope you had a good time. It's such a thrill for me to talk to you.
I had a joy. It's so great to express myself verbally and tell my story, and I want to continue to inspire people out there. I mean, you know, I know we're talking about the Telemasters album now, but I'm already thinking about 4 albums down the road. I've got plans, you know, working on a new album now with John Sebastian, who was one of my heroes growing up, with The Lovin' Spoonful, you know, and I've got a soul album coming out, and I've got some more solo acoustic albums coming out. So I just want to be as productive as possible.
And Arlen, if people want to get in touch with your buy your music, where can they go?
Right now, the best way is just to go to my website. Just go to arlenroth.com, ARLENROTH, arlenroth.com. And because right now the Telemasters is only available that way, but I'm about to enter into a record deal where, it's going to be all over the world. But for right now, in the interim, it's just available on my site. But everything else, it's available in all kinds of good places, Amazon, eBay, iTunes, whatever it is.
Check it out. Telemasters has got Brad Paisley, Vince Gill, Steve Cropper, Joe Bonamassa, Brent Mason, Albert Lee, Johnny Hyland, Jack Pearson. Amazing. And produced by a Grammy Award winner, 2-time, Tom Hambridge. A fantastic album.
Yes.
Definitely pick that album up. And we, Arlen, really look
Tom
forward.
Hambridge is great.
Yeah, we really look forward to that album and your next subsequent projects. Arlen, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to listen to the show.